9 a.m. where you are. Thank you for joining us today. Myself, Muniza Ali, your host for this session by AI Explain You Science. Ever wondered how to make sense of hundreds of research papers, spot trends, track influence, and see how a field evolves? That's the power of bibliometric review, and today we are learning it step by step. To guide us, we have an outstanding guest, a citation expert, a dedicated advocate for research excellence, and a trusted voice in scientific publishing. Please welcome our speaker, Dr. Ghita Ibrahimi, postdoctoral research fellow at AI Explain You Science.
Thank you very much, Muniza.
Over to you.
I'm trying to share my screen now. So, good morning, everyone. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to this workshop on conducting bibliometric literature reviews. So before we begin, I would like to briefly apologize for my voice today. I'm not feeling entirely well, and I ask you for your patience if my delivery is not quite at its best. So whether you are at an early stage of your research, career, or an experienced academic seeking to expand your methodological repertoire, I trust that today's session will provide you with both the theoretical foundations and practical tools to conduct rigorous, data driven reviews of scientific literature. So, before we begin, allow me to pose a question that I invite each of you to reflect upon through the day. So, how do we know what we know? And how do we map the landscape of a scientific field objectively? This is precisely the challenge that bibliometric analysis was designed to address. It transforms the overwhelming volume of published research into structured, visual, and quantifiable knowledge. So, before we begin, what is a bibliometric review? A bibliometric review, sometimes referred to as a quantitative literature review, it's a systematic approach to analyzing like large bodies of scientific literature using measurable objective indicators, unlike traditional narrative reviews, which are inherently interpretive and subject to the reviewer's subjective judgment. A bibliometric review relies on quantitative data like citation counts, co-authorship networks, keyword frequencies, and publication trends. Its primary objective is not to simply summarize what individual papers say, but rather to map the structural and intellectual organization of an entire field of inquiry, to reveal its history, its key actors, its thematic clusters, and its emerging frontiers. So, why does it matter? You may ask, why would we adopt a bibliometric approach rather than a conventional systematic review? The answer lies in the scope and objectivity. When a research field has accumulated like hundreds or even thousands of publications over several decades, a purely narrative review becomes both impractical and unreliable. So a bibliometric review, by contrast, enables us to first handle data sets ranging from 100 to 10,000 or more papers with consistency and reproducibility. Second, remove subjectivity inherent in traditional reviews by grounding our analysis in citation-based evidence. Third, identify research gaps, influential scholars, productive institutions, emerging topics in a transparent and replicable manner. So we move to types of literature review. It is important to distinguish between three types of review that you will encounter in literature. So we have first the systematic review. It prioritizes evidence synthesis and quality appraisal of individual studies. A bibliometric review, it focuses on trends, patterns, and knowledge structures. And the most comprehensive one is the hybrid method, where we have the bibliometric review and the systematic review. We combine both the strengths of these methods into a robust framework. It allows us to map the intellectual landscape through bibliometric at first, and then to conduct a deeper qualitative analysis of the most relevant paper identified, thus producing both breadth and depth. Seriously, in my case, I like to use bibliometric reviews when we talk about conference papers, because sometimes you have like 6 pages, they ask you for 6 pages. So in 6 pages, you cannot do a systematic review or a BSLR. I mostly use bibliometric reviews, but when I'm writing like a paper or a book chapter, mainly I use this one. It's the best practice. So um, now we move to the 7 steps of a bibliometric review. A rigorous bibliometric review follows 7 clearly defined steps, each of which builds upon the last. I will walk you through each step in turn with illustrative example drawn from published bibliometric studies. So, um, First of all, you should define your research objectives. Every rigorous review begins with a clearly articulated research agenda. So before you open any database or formulate any search query, you must define precisely what you seek to understand. So your research questions should address at least 3 dimensions: the temporal evolution of the field, that is, how has scholarly interest developed over time, the identification of key intellectual actors, I mean, who are the most influential authors, journals, and institutions, and the detection of research gaps, meaning what questions remain insufficiently explored. So, for example, in a bibliometric review on sensory marketing, the authors formulated 3 research questions addressing the evolution of the field over 4 decades, the identification of influential contributors, and the directions of future research. So this tripartite structure is now considered best practice in the discipline. So when you are writing, like when you want to do a bibliometric review, not write it, we're not there yet, you should define your research objectives. Step 2, so once your research objectives are defined, all set, you must identify and access an appropriate bibliographic database. So the 2 widely used sources in academic bibliometrics are mainly Scopus and Web of Science. And to a lesser extent, we have Google Scholar. But Scopus and Web of Science are generally preferred for bibliometric studies due to their broad interdisciplinary coverage, standardized metadata, and compatibility with analytical tools such as VosViewer, Bibliometric, NVivo, and so on. So, the construction of your search query is perhaps like the most important step in your bibliometric review. So you must define a set of keywords that accurately capture your topic and combine them using Boolean operators like and or not to refine the scope of your research. So your research must be fully documented and reproducible. So any competent researcher following your protocol should obtain identical results. Afterwards, we have data cleaning. So the raw dataset extracted from your database will be invariably contain noses. I mean, like duplicate records, papers in irrelevant languages, documents without abstract, or entries with incomplete metadata. So data cleaning is therefore an essential, too often underestimated step. The quality of your bibliometric analysis is entirely contingent on the quality of your data set. So with a clean data set, now you can perform your bibliometric analysis. which compromises two complementary components. First of all, you have like um, performance analysis, sorry, that examines quantitative indicators such as annual publication output, the most productive authors, the most cited journals, and the countries contributed more significantly to the field. Science mapping, on the other hand, reveals the intellectual structure of the field through a network-based techniques like co-citation analysis that identifies paper that are frequently cited together, suggesting they share like a common intellectual foundation. We have also bibliographic sorry coupling that links paper that reference the same sources, indicating that they address related research fronts. We have a cohorts analysis map analysis that maps the thematic landscape by examining keyword co-occurrences patterns. Next, when you have the results of your bibliometric analysis, you can communicate them effectively using visual representations. So two tools dominate the field. We have Voice Viewer, that I'm going to show you how to use it today. This software produces interactive network maps of co-authorship, co-citation, and keyword relationship. And we have Bibliometrics. It's an R-based package that offer a comprehensive suite of statistical and graphical outputs. So both tools are fully available and widely adopted in the research community. But to be honest, today I'm sharing my experience with bibliometric reviews. So actually, I don't use bibliometrics. I use Viewer, Excel, and Vivo, and I'm gonna tell you why afterwards. So the seventh step is the final step, which is interpretation. Everyone like can generate maps, tables, because it's a technical exercise. But the most interesting part of your paper is the interpretation. You must explain the thematic clusters that emerge, identify the dominant research paragraphs, detect the gaps that your study reveals, and situate your findings within like the broader landscape of your study or your discipline. I may say something here like when you have all the visualization, you can use ChatGPT or any like artificial intelligence tool to help you with the interpretation, but I would prefer that you do it yourself. So now that we have examined the conceptual framework, the seven steps methodology, and the three illustrative case study, it is time to move from theory to practice. So what I'm about to walk you through is not a simulated exercise, it's the actual workflow that I follow when I want to do like a bibliometric review. So today I'm choosing an already published paper on artificial intelligence and remote work. Okay. So every decision you will see me make was made in like a real research context with real methodological consequences. So I invite you to follow along on your own screens. So the goal at this stage is not to replicate every action in real time, but to understand like the logic behind each decision, because it is that logic, not the technical steps alone, that will make you like make a rigorous bibliometric review. So I always begin with Scopus. Okay, so here you have the document part, and it's in here that you insert your search query. Okay, so as I said, I'm searching artificial intelligence in relationship to remote work. So I'm gonna type artificial intelligence, you must use this sign if you want to have papers on artificial intelligence and not papers about artificial intelligence, each on its own. And then remote work, we use this sign always, and then we click search. So this query searches simultaneously within the title, abstract, and keyword of every document indexed in Scopus. The end that we wrote here ensures that only papers addressing both concepts are retrieved. So paper that discusses artificial intelligence in isolation or remote work in isolation are systematically excluded. So the initial search query returned to a total of 279 documents. Okay. Afterwards, I'm going to tell you something. If you want to have less work to do when you are having a bibliometric review, you must apply always exclusion criteria. It could be in years, like you can choose like recent works. For example, when we talk about 2026, maybe you should start with 2060, like recent work, like 10 years of artificial intelligence in the remote work. But this, it's mainly when we have more than 1,000 documents. Okay, you can choose to focus on computer science, on business management, social sciences, so according to your discipline. You can choose to work only on papers or conference papers. You can only work on papers. So the goal here is to mainly simplify your work. You can choose your language, but mainly when we want like to publish our work in international conferences, book chapters, and so on, it's mainly English. So this inclusion criteria might facilitate the work for us. No, cancel. So here, what I choose is papers and conference papers, English, and we click limit to. Now the number of papers is narrowed to 158. Okay, so for myself, I download the papers. Okay, I click all and I download them, and then I start eliminating duplicates and stuff myself. But at this point, you may be wondering why not simply export the full CSV. Like you can do this. You can click here all and export the CSV and handle the refinement later. So it's a perfect valid question and one I anticipated. So the reason I prefer to apply the exclusion filters directly within the database interface before any export or right after the export, I'm gonna add some inclusion criteria that I'm gonna show you later. It's a matter of methodological traceability. When the filtering logic is embedded in the search query itself, visible, reproducible, and citable, it becomes part of the documented methodology of the paper. So a reviewer or like a future researcher can replicate this easily when he reads my paper. Instead of exporting everything and then filtering manually on Excel, that filtering process becomes invisible to the reader. So it exists only on my hard drive. So in rigorous academic publishing, what cannot be seen cannot be verified, and what cannot be verified cannot be trusted. So methodological transparency is not a formality. It is the foundation of scholarly credibility. So as I told you, I don't know everything. I already did this. I'm just showing you how to do that. And I also use Web of Science. I'm sorry, in Morocco, we do access Web of Science through this website. We're gonna wait for it to open. I think there is a problem with Web of Science. So anyway, it is the same process as Scopus. I think we have a problem with it. So here in Web of Science, like we follow the same research logic, search logic, sorry. So in the topic search field, which is equivalent to article title, abstract, keywords here in Scopus. Here, for example, we write artificial intelligence. I already have it here. You click add a row, click another topic, and you write remote work. You click search. You have here 121 papers. In here, you can apply the same inclusion criteria that you applied earlier. Where is the languages? Here also, click English and refine. Okay, and so you can download the papers from here. Okay, so the first phase is very critical, so you must do it in a very refined way. So once the data set was finalized, I already downloaded all of this, cleaned the data, and so on. You should turn to this descriptive bibliometric analysis, so the phase in which we characterize the corpus before mapping it. This involves identifying the most prolific authors, the most cited journals, and the publication trend over time, and the geographic distribution of contributions. Now, tools like Bibliometrics, the R-based bibliometric package we talked about, can generate all of these outputs automatically from a single import, and for large data sets of several hundreds of several thousand papers, I would strongly recommend it. However, for a data set of a few papers like 100 or 158, as in this study, I deliberately chose to conduct this phase manually on Excel. I will explain why. So with small records like these ones, especially when you eliminate duplicates and papers that are not in phase with my research, manual Excel analysis takes approximately like 1 or 2 hours, which give me something that automated tools cannot. I can have like intimate familiarity with my own data. When I sort authors by hand, I notice that certain names appear across multiple papers in different roles, first author, co-author, and so on. When I classify journals manually, I begin to notice like patterns in disciplinary orientation, whether the field is dominated by information system journals, management journals, or psychology outlets. This granular acquaintance with the corpus informs the quality of my interpretation later. So in that way, I automatically generate bar charts. I'm gonna show you how I do. So remote work, it's, as I told you, an already published paper. Here I have my Excel. So I sort it like this. I have the Web of Science paper here, the Scopus papers here. I have like a final with Scopus and Web of Science papers. In here I have the 5 most prominent authors in the field, because sometimes we cannot talk about all the authors. You choose like the 5 most prominent authors, or the 10 most prominent authors in the fields, because sometimes they all publish just one paper. So what's the biggie in talking about all the authors? So you choose to talk about the 5 prominent authors with the highest citations. So when we have like uh, too much authors, we start talking not about publications but about citations. As I told you in a bibliometric review, you do not just talk about the publications, but the citation count also. Here I have the conferences that talked about the subject, and I do generate the charts using the chart tool. We have here the most prominent journals. We have like the share of the conferences and the paper conferences in the journal papers. You can also sort papers by country. So here you may notice that United States are the country that publish more on artificial intelligence and remote work, which doesn't surprise me at all. And you have the years of publications. So mainly it started in 2022. But the research I conducted it in 2025. So if you like go conduct your research now, you may find like many other papers. So here was the Excel part. Now I'm gonna move to the Voice Viewer part. So Voice Viewer, you can download it easily from Google. I'm gonna wait for it to open. So here's Voice Viewer. It's the most simple tool I've ever seen in my entire life. So I want to be precise about what we are showing today because Voice Viewer is capable of many types of analysis, co-authorship, co-citation, bibliometric coupling, but the one that I mostly directly eliminate for a study of this nature is keyword co-occurrences. It answers a deceptively simple but profoundly important question: which concepts appear together most frequently across the literature, and what does that tell us about how the field is intellectually organized? So in Voice Viewer, I select create. Here we're gonna select create a map based on bibliographic data. This is what we are searching for: co-authorship, keyword co-occurrences. We click next, and then we search for the kind of files we have. For my case, I have a RIS file. I already told you that I already did the downloading, the data cleaning stuff. So here you click RIS. If you have like an EndNote or a RIFWork, you can download it. But here I have a RIS file. You click in here, and then I move to, I'm gonna go find my AI remote work, and here is my RIS file. It is the only showing thing in here. So afterwards I click next. So here I either choose to find the co-authorship, okay, or the co-occurrences. If you want the co-authorship, I mean like the authors that are kindly related in the field, you might click next. Here you can adjust the minimum number of documents of an author and so on, but clearly you should do nothing. Choose the number of authors. Here are the number of authors. However, when you click finish, they tell you that some of the 46 items in your network are not connected to each other. So the largest set of connected items consists of 10 items. You click yes, and you have like the network visualization of your authors, the authors that are connected to each other. Okay, you have the overlay visualization and density. However, like when we talk about co-authorship, we do not need this. We only need this. Okay, these are the authors that are kindly connected to each other. However, the thing that interests me the most is the keyword occurrences. It is the thing that will enable us to have like more data. So here we click co-occurrences, keyword, full counting always. We click next. Here I like to narrow it to one so I can have like maximum of keywords. I click next. I don't play with it. Here you can do like a small cleaning if you like. For example, if there are like words that don't say much, but I won't do any cleaning and I'll click finish. They'll do the cleaning themselves. So here we have a map that reveals the thematic architecture of the field. The nodes that appear close together share a strong co-occurrence relationship. They tend to appear in the same paper, suggesting they belong to the same conceptual cluster. So, for example, click remote work here, we can find items. And for example, here is the cluster in red. We have employee engagement, sustainability, agile, AI, data analytics. So the color of each node indicates that the cluster to which those viewer had assigned it based on a modularity algorithm that identifies groups of keywords more strongly connected to each other than the rest of the network. So these ones are most connected to each other, these two, and these two. Okay, so the first network visualization. This is the default view of the most of what are the most researchers familiar with. It displays all the nodes and all the links color coded by cluster. So this view is ideal for understanding the a relational structure of the field, which keywords are central. For example, here, the most central keywords are remote work and artificial intelligence, normally. So you will observe, for instance, that some terms like, for example, automation, digital transformation occupy distant but interconnected clusters, suggesting that the field is structured around at least two or three major research traditions that occasionally converge. This is like your primary analytical output, and it should be the first map you interpret and describe in your results section. Second, we have the overlay visualization. So this view replaces the cluster color coding with temporal color gradients. So typically ranging from blue for older keywords to yellow or green for more recent ones. So the overlay visualization answers like a different question. Not what the field looks like structurally, but how it has evolved over time. So the keywords that appear in yellow or green are emergent concepts like digital transformation, corporate AI training, AI digital assistant, and so on. But the ones in blue are the oldest one, like primary care is me, distributed cognition for team, design thinking, and so on. But they told us that they are like the oldest keywords. So this is like a powerful tool for identifying future research directions, precisely the kind of insights that editors and reviewers expect a bibliometric review to produce. Here we have density visualization. So rather than displaying individual nodes, this view renders the entire keyword space as a heat map. Areas of high keyword density appear in warm colors, while less populated area appear in cooler colors like algorithmic management in here. Okay, so the density visualization is most useful as a communication tool. It provides like a quick, visually intuitive sense of where the field's intellectual mass is concentrated and where the conceptual landscape is sparse. So, in presentations and workshops such as this one, it is often the most immediately legible map for the audience that is not yet familiar with bibliometric notation. However, for the analytical content of your paper, the network and visualization carry greater scholarly weight. So, having mapped the intellectual structure of the field through VOS Viewer, we now face the most intellectually demanding transition in the entire bibliometric slash systematic literature review, like the hybrid workflow. So we're going to move from the quantitative map to the qualitative understanding. So VOS Viewer tells us that certain clusters exist in here, but it doesn't tell us what the papers in those clusters actually argue and what theoretical frameworks they employ or what empirical findings they report. For that, we need a software called In Vivo. However, this one is not freely available. You need to purchase it. I'm gonna wait for it to open. Okay, so um, I have this one. I'm gonna just work with this one. Okay, so here we suppose that you already imported your data through like this. Okay, and supposedly you imported your data. Now you should select all the papers that you imported. Okay, we have so much papers. You should click explore. Basically, the tools I use the most are word frequency. So I will click word frequency mainly for the BSLR. Here, I'm sorry, the software is in French. Here you choose the words, how many words you wanna show. So here I'm gonna choose just 50. Okay, and to avoid words with and so on, I'm gonna choose 5 word length. You can here use like these options, but I click execute. Here you have the word frequency. So these are the most used words. I'm sorry, I didn't use the file of remote work, but anyway, we're just showing the methodology. So here we have the most used words. Every word, producing like a ranked list of the most frequent terms across the entire corpus. So why do we need this if we already have like a VOS viewer keyword data? Because author keywords and the actual language used in the body of a paper are not the same thing. So authors assign keywords strategically, often to maximize discoverability, but the conceptual vocabulary embedded in the prose of their arguments may be richer, more nuanced, and more revealing. So, word frequency analysis surfaces this latent vocabulary in our study. So, it reveals in terms such as employee, artificial intelligence, and so on, finding what shaped the theoretical interpretations substantially. So we have also the word cloud. This is like the visual presentation of the word frequency analysis. So the most frequent terms appear in large larger font size and the overall visualization composition gives like an immediate um, impression of the thematic preoccupation of the literature. So I want to be transparent about the epistemological status of the word cloud. It is not in itself an analytical tool. It is a communication device. Its value lies in its capacity to make the core vocabulary of a field legible at a glance to an audience, to reviewers, to co-authors who need to quickly orient themselves within the corpus. So in academic papers, the word cloud is typically placed at the beginning of the results section as an orienting visual before the more granular analyses are presented. So um, basically, in vivo sometimes calls like the surface analysis. It's a visualization of how teams distribute themes distribute across the corpus over time or across document categories. So in our study it was used to examine how the treatment of artificial intelligence and remote work have shifted before like pre-pandemic period and post-pandemic period. Okay, but here I forgot to open the document about artificial intelligence and remote work, but who cares? We only care about the methodology. Okay, so let us consolidate what we have witnessed in this demonstration. So we begin by published research question. So the relationship between like artificial intelligence and remote work. Sorry. So we constructed like a reproducible search query, applied methodologically justified exclusion and inclusion criteria within like Scopus and Web of Science. Also, I showed you how to use Excel so you can generate quantitative data, and I showed you how to use viewer like keyword co-occurrences analysis and co-authorship analysis. Sorry, and we finally used in vivo to move from structure to meaning using word frequency, word clouds, and surfaces. So this workflow, I may say, is not like a template to be followed mechanically. Is what I use to make my papers publishable. You can like go search for my name in Google Scholar or in Scopus. I have published like many bibliometric and systematic literature review or hybrid research, and mainly there were in papers, conference papers, and book chapters, and they were always accepted. So I'm showing you what I do to get my papers to be published. Okay, so we have completed like here the live demonstration, and now we will move to how can we write this bibliometric review paper. So first of all is the title. So it must explicitly identify the review as a bibliometric in nature. So if authors are searching for a bibliometric or a literature review, they can find it easily. However, if you don't want to introduce it, it's no biggie. So your abstract must concisely present four elements: the objective of the paper, of course, the aim of the paper, the methodology you used, the principal results, and the conclusion. The introduction must contextualize like the study, articulates the gap in existing knowledge, and states your research objectives clearly. The method section perhaps is like the most critical section for credibility, must be sufficiently detailed to allow full and independent replication, like database selection, search query, inclusion and exclusion criteria, and the analytical tools employed must be like explicitly documented. The results section, though, here we present like both descriptive statistics from Excel, like publication trends, top journals, top authors, country distribution, as I showed you, and also the output of voice viewer network, the in vivo clusters, the keyword co-occurrences maps, and so on. So, however, in the discussion, which is like the most important part in a paper, it's the discussion. It's where you show your added value in the field. And then we have the conclusion when you should synthesize all your insights, acknowledge the limitation of your study, and propose like concrete directions for future studies. Um, Now we turn like to the more technically advanced dimension of bibliometric analysis, the techniques and emergent trends that distinguish a competent review from like an exceptional one. So, um, the advanced techniques. Beyond like the keyword co-occurrence analysis we demonstrated today, three techniques deserves like particular attention. Co-citation analysis, which examines which papers are the most relevant to your research or addressing the same research problem. So, co-citation analysis is therefore a powerful tool for identifying the foundational intellectual roots of a field. As I told you, in a bibliometric review, we focus like on publications and on citations also. We have bibliographic coupling that operates on like the inverse logic. It links the papers that share like a significant number of common references, papers that draw on the same body of prior literature, which are likely available in publications This is what we performed in VosViewer today. Maps the conceptual structure of a field by analyzing keyword occurrences. Of the three technique, it's like the most immediately interpretable, and it is like the most commonly used in published bibliometric reviews. Now we have emerging trends in bibliometric reviews. So three trends are currently shaping the practice of bibliometric analysis and will define it in the future. First, topic modeling. You should use algorithms such as latent Dirichlet allocation that allows researchers to identify thematic structures and large corpora automatically, which I don't use. So I'm just showing you like the emergent trends. Second, hybrid reviews, the BSLR that I talked to you about today. So they are increasingly expected by top journals, which recognize that neither pure bibliometrics nor pure systematic reviews is sufficient by its own. So actually, if you're doing a bibliometric review, the future research direction would be, we should do a systematic literature review to capture the subject in depth and so on. Okay, so third, we have explainable AI in bibliometric analysis. To like enter the bibliometric toolkit, offering like researchers new ways to make the logic of algorithmic analysis transparent and interpretable to human readers. So there are like many existing websites that can do a bibliometric review for you. You may search it, but actually I like to I'm a traditional person. I like to do things myself. So evaluation checklist. So here, before concluding, I want to leave you with like four diagnostic questions that you should apply to every bibliometric review you produce or evaluate, because like I'm a reviewer, so I reviewed like many bibliometric and systematic literature reviews in conferences and also in journals. So first one is the search reproducible? So can I do this like as a reviewer or as an independent researcher? Would I be able to run like the exact query and arrive to the same data set? Because if the reviewer doesn't arrive to the same data set, he will be like, what did you do? From where did you get all this data? Okay, so is the data set clean and complete? So as I told you, I do the data cleaning myself to ensure that only the most reliable papers are chosen. And is afterwards, the third thing is, are the methods clearly justified? Because if you don't justify your methods, tell them this is what I do, this is what I did, sorry, this is what I did, this is what I did. The reviewer will be like, your methods part is not sufficiently detailed. Can you please detail it? Okay. So the fourth one is, are the interpretations logically sound? So the maps, tables, so they exist to support arguments, so not to substitute for it. So you need like to interpret your visualizations logically. That's normal. However, I told you, you can use like artificial intelligence to interpret for you, but you need to know how to interpret stuff yourself. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we have like covered substantial ground today, from the epistemological foundations of bibliometric analysis through its 7-step methodology, its application, and its full practical execution using Scopus, Web of Science, Voice Viewer, and in vivo. So allow me to close this workshop with the 5K takeaways I hope you will carry forward from this workshop. First of all, you need to always define clear research questions before starting. If you don't have clear research questions, of course, you won't have like clear results. You should use Scopus with structured Boolean queries like and or not. Okay, not all, not just Scopus, Web of Science also, or any database you use. You need to clear data because it ensures that you have like quality results. Viewer and Bibliometric like are core tools, but in vivo for me like enables like an interpretive depth, and together like they constitute the methodological core of a hybrid methodology or a hybrid literature review. So fifth and above all, we have the interpretation, which is like the most critical final steps. So you should invest your greatest intellectual effort in the interpretation of your results. So tools generate maps, but scholars generate the meaning of these maps. A bibliometric review, like it's a powerful quantitative approach that allows us to map scientific knowledge, identify trends, detect research gaps. Before like starting your thesis, you should start with a bibliometric review, for example, to detect the research gaps, to know who are like the most reliable authors in your fields. Maybe you can contact them, maybe you can share knowledge together and so on. So unlike like traditional reviews, you rely on objective data, citation, keywords, and networks. So today, like you have taken like the first step toward bibliometric reviews. I wasn't able to show you all of it like in 40 minutes. I think that I already passed 40 minutes. So I thank you sincerely for your engagement and attention. And now like you can pose questions. The floor is yours. I hope I was brief and the conference was interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gita, for this incredible session, and thank you all for joining us. Keep researching, keep going. See you next time from AI Explain Your Science. Thank you so much.